I think it's really easy to take family for granted, and it's even easier to take family history for granted. And I think it often comes down to you in snippets and bits and pieces, and you half remember things and you half remember other things. And in the case of my own family, of course I always knew they were communists. When I was a child, we spent many an afternoon chopping up oranges for marmalade for the Morning Star Bazaar and so on. And my grandfather would often press a copy of the Soviet Weekly into my hand as I left the house. And when I started work on A World Between Us, I didn't really think I was writing about my family at all. Of course, I was inspired to write it, partly because that was how I knew about the Battle of Cable Street, because my grandfather had taken part in it. But I didn't realise how much they would pop up in my research and so on, and that I would suddenly be surprised into tears in the library by an account of my grandmother, for example, breaking the news of an international brigade's death with his girlfriend. That was in the children's writer's Lila Berg's autobiography. Or another description of Lila Berg joining the Communist Party at my grandfather's flat, and describing them. And it wasn't just my grandparents, both of them had sisters who were in the party too. And in fact, I have a letter from one of them to another sister who was living in Cairo at the time. It was the 8th of August 1936, so it was just after the Spanish Civil War had started. And Lulu wrote to Bertha, "I can hardly believe you would not be in the CP if you'd worked in London. And I can hardly believe that I should be if I'd had a job designing in Cairo. That you shrink from dogmatism is natural, but because action is necessary, 100% action in thought and speech and living inevitably follows for a good communist." And she then goes on in the letter and then realises she's actually writing a speech and stops and starts giving Bertha some family news instead. But it gave me a real sense of just how involved they all were and what it was that made people feel they had to do these things at that time, that they were very dark and difficult times and the world was so divided and people felt absolutely compelled to take action and do something about the threat of fascism.